Have you got some sad neglected tubes of paint lurking at the bottom of your paint box? Maybe you've pretty much finished them, you can't get any more out, or even worse, they're full but they've totally hardened. Well, don't throw them away. Stick with me and we're going to do a little emergency first aid and get them back working for you. My name's Liz Chaderton. I'm a professional artist based in Berkshire, and every week I bring you a tip, trick or technique that I wish someone had told me when I started painting. And this week it's all about how to do CPR on your paint tubes. Good idea to always start with your lightest colour to avoid contamination. Right, welcome to my operating theatre. I have the patient ready on the table, and I've got various tools that I think might be helpful. I've got just a flat scraping knife, I've got a couple of palette knives, a pair of scissors, sharp knives, little dropper in case I need that. I have some pots to put the paint in. These were about £10 for 150 off Amazon with really good sealing lids, and you can just cut them off the strip so you've got little individual pots, really handy. Or if your paint is still quite liquid, so not dried up like this one, you might just want to squidge it into one of these little pans. I've got a cutting board just to protect the surface and a pen so I can actually write what the colour is, so I don't get utterly confused because they will all look the same. So this is sap green, so that's a good start. Right, now the lid had obviously come off this at some point and that is solid, but there's a lot of paint in there and it's an artist quality one, so I just don't want to waste it. So the first thing to do is to cut the end off. Now these are metal tubes, so please be careful, and then slice down through one side of the tube, and again go careful. It might not be possible, you might end up cutting all the way through, but hopefully not. And then right up by the shoulder, if you cut both sides so it's like a capital T, that should let you open things out. So you now need to open out the tube and see what's going on. So I got rejected from medical school. It's hard to see why. I'd have been such a good surgeon, wouldn't I? Oh, look at that. So lots of yummy, usable paint that has utterly dried up. Look, in the tube. So it's actually far easier to deal with the paint that's totally dried up. It's just when you're at the tail end of a tube that it starts to get very mucky. I did a purple one before I started filming this. So you can, when it's totally dried up, just peel the paint off. This actually is still a little bit tacky, so you could use one of your palette knives and peel that off, or scrape it off if you want to. And that is obviously totally clean now. So we need to squidge this lot in to the pot. I will come back to that in a second. And then put some water in with it so that it can all rehydrate. Just a few drops because you don't want it to be totally liquid. Let's see how that goes on. Seal the lid, nice satisfying click. And we'll let that rehydrate. I mean, that's going to take a couple of days, I reckon. Let it rehydrate. If needs be, I'm just going to wipe that over. This purple has got to be everywhere. If needs be, we can add a drop of glycerin or a drop of honey or a drop of gum arabic to help get the flow going on that. But let's just start with water and leave that to sit. Now we've got this end, so we can scrape out. You know, that is a lot of paint that you really don't want to be wasting. Look at that. What a beautiful tube. So let's get another of these little pots ready. I'm going to remember to write the colour on again. So sap green. Close the lid. There we go. Squish those bits in there and there and there. And then again, just put in a few drops of water. Carefully seal that lid. And that should soften and rehydrate over the next few days. Get rid of that. Get rid of that, but keep the lids. Now that one had lost its lid, hence it had dried up. So keep lids. So if you lose a lid, you should have in your little stash a lid that fits. I have my patient, which is a tube of Daniel Smith's Perylene Green, which I love, and you can see I've used it just about all up, but there's some in there and I really want to get that out. So first things first is to cut the bottom off. Now the tubes are made of metal. Do go careful, they will be sharp. And then what you want to do is, starting right at the shoulder, is cut through, and if at all possible, just cut one side of the tube, not all the way through. Then at the shoulder end, you want to cut close to the shoulder, because that's likely where all the paint will have accumulated. And we can do that. Can take the lid off. If there is anything worth saving in the lid, we could scrape that out. Ooh, see, there's a fair amount in there. And put it in our pot. Don't throw the lid away. If I were you, I would wash it and keep it, because I certainly lose lids to tubes. They fall on the floor, they go under things, or sometimes they lose their thread. So if you've got a little stash of lids, that might save paint in the future. Right, back to the patient. Let's open out that tube. So just going careful that we don't cut ourselves on anything sharp. Now, because this wasn't a dried out tube, it was just a used up one, it's still sticky inside, and also that's partly because it's a Daniel Smith's and they don't dry up. So I'm going to get covered here. It is not a clean operation, but for saving all this yummy paint, and if you've never used Perylene Green, oh, it's gorgeous. It's really worth it. Right, you can see how much is in there. So because it is all still pretty sticky, let's use a good strong knife and scrape that off, and then get that into our little pot. this had dried up, you could just peel it off the plastic. It's so much easier if it's just totally dried up. It's when it's at this sort of tar-like sticky stage, you are just going to get covered, but never mind. So if it's squidgy like this, you could have mashed it into a little pan, but I think these little pots, especially given that I've got 150 of the jolly things, are perfect. So I'm going to try and get much of this off as possible. You know, I can paint a whole picture with this. I'm doing it on a cutting board that will need to be wiped down between each colour, but just to protect the surface when I'm cutting through with the scalpel or the sharp knife. Okay. And then just take the lid or the top bit with the shoulder, scrape that out. Probably find the neck there's quite a lump sort of actually in the neck, so we can hoik that out, and that I reckon is as much as I'm going to save from there. What I would do now is put a few drops of water in, just clean water, especially if it was dried up, but even when it's at this tarry stage. Seal the lid, give it a bit of shake and leave it for a few days, and it'll just rehydrate. So next time I want to use that, it'll all be ready to go. Then say clear everything up before you decide to go on to the next colour.